Welcome to another stage analysis video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up the new stage analysis technical attributes indicator, which is known as SATA, S-A-T-R. And it's basically a scoring system between 0 and 10, which you can see down here from one of the examples. This is the initial grid style that pops up, but all of these examples are using the SATA indicator. So there's multiple different ways you can set it up, all the way from just literally having the SATA score itself just showing with the moving averages on the chart and no indicator showing, to an oscillator view like so, or background colors like this, or you can use the background colors with the oscillator or the grid style, or you can even deselect different parts of the grid style and just use different rows from in here to see different versions of the indicator and give you different bits of information. So for example, if we look at the initial style, the grid style here, this in the data window here, which if you pop this up, you'll see where it says SATA, it shows the different rows. So row 10, for example, in here, this top line is the breakouts and breakdowns line. So when we tend to get a stage 2 move, you will obviously have a breakdown. When you have a stage 4 break, it will break down. So this is one of the key ones that you need to identify, that as if you're just using the colored bands and it's just showing the scores, that doesn't necessarily mean because it's in green that it's in stage 2 or it's in red it's in stage 4. It's just purely based on the score of the indicator. So when you first set up the indicator, you get this matrix grid view. So if I change back to the full view in this, to see this a little bit easier. So you'll see this is if I drop off, let's get rid of the secondary one and let's get rid of the background one. So when you first load up the indicator, let me delete that as well. You go to indicators, go to community scripts, search for stage analysis and core attributes, SATA and by stage analysis. You can see here. So we add that to our chart. When you add it to the chart, this is the initial view that you get. So if you squash it down, you get this grid view, and you can see the oscillator view is overlaid over the top of it. So initially, what you want to do with the grid view, if you want to use the grid view, is to hide. You don't want to hide the SATA score itself. By doing that, you actually remove the total score. So what you want to do is go to the inputs, and on the color of the SATA score there, you want to change the black to a 0% opacity, then click OK, and that gives you your grid view. You can see from the grid view, it's really, really useful. It shows you when the stock is more green that you're in a potential stage 2 environment, and when it's more red you're in a potential stage 4 environment, and when it's mixed you're either in stages 1 or 3. So this, if you get into it, is a really useful way, and the original way that I designed the indicator. So you can hide the values over here so they don't show on the side, and then obviously you can see your overall SATA score shows over here as you scroll over it, and you can see the color blocks at the moment. So for example, this week on the 12th of September 2022, you can see they've got no breakout or breakdown at the moment, but we've got the score of the 9th row is green, the 7th row is green, the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd example are all green. So we've got an overall score of 5, as each green gets a score of 1 and each red or blue gets a score of 0. So the current SATA score is 5, i.e. we're in stage 1 or stage 3. Because we've just come from stage 4, we're in stage 1. It's very simple in that regard, but obviously this is only one way you can set it up. There's obviously multiple other ways you can set it up. So from this point here, from the initial indicator, if you want to get this to go to the background color bands, what you need to do is come over here to settings, click on the settings, and then from here you can see background colors. So we can select background colors here, and what you want to do is you don't want to turn off the SATA score itself, as you still want to keep that, as I said, with the opacity. But what you want to do is untick all of the different grid values here. So if we lose all of these rows, you now see that you've got the bands here. So we click OK, and you can see we've got the color bands. So what you next want to do is go to the 3 dots here where it says more, and then you want to move to existing pane above. And now that is pushed into the existing pane above. But what it does is adds the 0 to 10 scale up the left hand side. So again, you have to click the more button, and you have to pin scale to no scale full screen, and now you've got the background bands showing, and you can see the SATA score over here on its own with none of the other extra info, as obviously that's all hidden. If you did turn those back on again, they would obviously populate over the top of the screen, so you don't want that really. So that's one way that you can do it if you just want the background colors. If you want the oscillator version underneath this instead of the background bands, or just as this, actually first of all you can change the colors of the background bands. So if you go to inputs, all of the different 10 here are showing. So at the moment we've got that. Again, we've got the actual SATA oscillator showing here, so in the background. So if you put that to 0, as I said, and you go to style, make sure your background colors are turned on, then you can change these colors to whatever you want them to be. So within here, each row has a score. So for example, 10 is the darkest green, it's got a 20% green, whereas 0 is the darkest red, it's got a 20% red. So you can change all of those colors to whatever you want them to be. So obviously if you want more, if you didn't want the 7 score when it starts to turn green to be green, you could obviously change that to one of the blue colors as well, and that will change the background color. So again, it does flick off the background colors bar when it does it, so you can change that, and that'll give you a slightly different reading there. So you can do whatever you like, make them gray, only turn on the negative bars, you can color them however you want. So again, if I remove that, so another way you can use the indicator. So again, if we re-add the indicator again. So you've got your initial indicator, as I said, that pops up. You go to settings, you want to get rid of, you don't want to turn off the SATA score, as I said, you just want to hide that. But in this case, we actually want to show the oscillator. So instead, what we're going to do is untick all of these 10 rows. So you can see here, get rid of that, get rid of overhead resistance. And now we also, you can see it's got a scale of 0 to 10 here, but obviously we want to use this more like you would use an oscillator like the stochastics or an RSI. So what we do is add the 2 levels here. So a level at the SATA score of 7 and a level at the SATA score of 3. So you can also add the background colors to this if you want as well, which obviously for a bit more visual, if you're a bit more visually inclined. But if you want the most simple, cleaner version of the oscillator, then have it like this, basically with the 7 and the 3 set. As basically when you're above 7, you tend to be in a stage 2 environment. When it drops out of below 7 but doesn't get into the lower zone, it tends to be during a consolidation period, as you can see through here on the NASDAQ. So it never dropped down. And then obviously we start to get below the 3 level down to a SATA 1 and the SATA 0 in this period here in late January. So that's when we're starting to move into potential stage 4 type environment. At that point, you can see it was attempting to break down there. So that's another way that you can have the oscillator set up. Another one that you can do, which is potentially one of my favorite ways of setting it up. So again, if I remove this, let's go to the background only. So this one is a little bit different. You can change so this has got the original SATA indicator turned on, but it's only got the breakouts and breakdowns line on, and I've changed the square to a circle on this. So this is just literally, if I turned on more rows, you would see these rows start to appear down here and that. But basically all I've got showing is the breakouts and breakdowns. And then I've got the background color bands on. So you can see the background color bands. And then in order to identify potential stage 2, you're looking for a breakout week. So you can see here on this week here, the 25th of May, we're potentially starting to move into stage 2 on the NASDAQ here, for example. You can see over here with the breakdown week, potentially this is the start of stage 4. Potentially, obviously from our horizontal line here, it's showing the automated way it just popped below, so not totally. The week after or a few weeks after that basically is where it moved into stage 4 a little bit more convincingly there. So like I said, it's an automated tool. It's not perfect, but it will give you obviously good guidance. If we look at some other stocks, for example, PayPal is a good example of the stages. You can see here, see stage 2 breakout week. You can see down here the breakout week itself. move up. You see the band had been on green for a couple of weeks there. With the SATA score was on a move to a 7, move to an 8, and then on that week it moved to a 10. So often the stage 2 breakout will happen on a SATA score of 10, and the stage 4 breakdown will happen on a SATA score of 0. So again, if I highlight this area here, so you can see the first breakdown where you can see the 30-week moving average is still rising at this point. So that's not a stage 4 breakdown at that point. This week here, where it has this second breakdown, is where it potentially starts to move. The 30-week starts to turn down. That's where it starts to move into potential stage 4. So if we draw this line down here, you can see relative strength below the 0 line here. It obviously had a couple of little breakdowns, and you can see the SATA score itself was a 0 on that week. The week before it was a 1. That week it was a 0. So often, as I said, the stage 2 breakout will be on a 10. So you see with PayPal here, and the stage 4 breakdown will be on a 0. So let's turn that off. Again, go back to our one that shows all of them all together. So this is all of them on the chart at the same time. As I said, this is a little bit crazy when they're all together. Although obviously, if you're that way inclined, you want to see multiple indicators. This is the same indicator, each one of these in 3 different views. One way you can do it, as I said, without all of this showing, if you just turn off the background colors, leave the SATA score on, get rid of your lower indicator, get rid of this one. Just have your Mansfield relative strength indicator down here. So Mansfield. So you want the unflattened version or the original version. So if you go with the original version, for example, here, you can have your Mansfield relative strength. Again, you can turn off the background colors on that. So if you just want a classic stage analysis chart, you just have it like this with the 30-week moving average and the 10-week moving average and the Mansfield relative strength below, and your SATA score is just over here, just as a running total, so you can see what the score is. So for example, as I said, this week we're on a 5, you're in stage 1, and then obviously when you're breaking down into stage 4 type areas, you're on a 0 there, and it tends to hold on that kind of area. So it can be as visible or invisible as you like, but the score is really useful to know what kind of state the stock is in and whether it's in stage 2, stage 1, stage 3, or stage 4. So hopefully that helps you with setting up the indicator, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, see you on the next one.